Welcome to the Full Moon Film Buff, episode 69. We're going to talk about The Company of Wolves from 1984. I rented this from Amazon Prime. I had seen this before. Buckle up, Wolfpack. There is a lot to discuss here. The show notes for this episode have more links than usual to books and reference materials if you want to dig deeper on your own. Let's begin with the prominent crew and cast. The film was directed by Neil Jordan, written by Angela Carter and Neil Jordan, with effects supervision by Alan Whibley. Neil Jordan won an Oscar for writing The Crying Game and was also nominated for Best Director. Angela Carter is much better known for her fiction and nonfiction writing than for her few dabbles in screenwriting. She's an interesting writer to look into if you are into modern Gothic fairy tale adaptations. My personal favorites from Alan Whibley's long career are Excalibur from 1981 and Reign of Fire from 2002. Before I move to the cast, this is only part of a bigger and a more impressive cast. I'm deliberately limiting myself to the main cast and the primary storyline. This episode will be long enough already. I do recommend checking out the complete cast list. A link to the IMDb page for each movie that I discuss can always be found in the show notes. Sarah Patterson played Rosaline. Angela Lansbury was Granny. David Warner played Father, and Tussie Silberg played Mother. Georgia Slow was Alice. Shane Johnstone was the amorous boy, and Misha Burgess as the huntsman. Angela Lansbury had an extremely long career, crossing 8 decades in film, stage, and television. She received her first nomination in 1945 for Best Supporting Actress at the age of 19 for Gaslight in 1944. She was nominated again the next year for The Picture of Dorian Gray in 1945. Though establishing herself early as a talented ingenue, Lansbury later transitioned to more mature and darker roles. She delivered a chilling performance as the malevolent mother in The Manchurian Candidate in 1962, considered one of her greatest films, and got another Best Supporting Actress nomination. However, Lansbury's most iconic role arrived when she was cast as mystery writer and amateur sleuth Jessica Fletcher on the long-running television series Murder, She Wrote, which ran from 1984 to 1996. In addition to the extensive screen work, Lansbury had an illustrious stage career. She earned 5 Tony Award nominations and 1 for her moving performance in the classic musical Mame in 1966. She received an honorary Oscar in 2013 and was an entertainment legend. David Warner was another prolific and well-recognized actor with 242 credits. His career included prestigious roles as well as lots of genre parts. Some personal favorites are Time Bandits in 1981, Tron in 1982, Star Trek V, The Final Frontier in 1989, and several Doctor Who roles, and the television series Penny Dreadful in 2014, another werewolf. My wife would want me to mention that he also appears in Midsummer Murders, current favorite show. While Micah Burgess has 10 acting credits, what information I could dig up indicates that he has done a lot more work as a dancer, choreographer, and dance troupe artistic director. I enthusiastically recommend this movie. It's atmospheric and creepy, loaded with symbolism and thematic exploration. It has inventive visuals and a story you have to ponder to understand. It's intellectually meaty and artistically beauty. Top recommendation. Now, one cool tidbit, this film is closely adapted from a short story of the same name by Angela Carter, along with the few other werewolf stories found in the Bloody Chamber collection. Carter directly contributed to the screenplay of this film. Carter's original screenplay for this film is published in The Curious Room. Neil Jordan and Carter also discussed producing a film adaptation of Vampirella, the radio drama that became The Lady of the House of Love. But this project was never released. I really wish it had been. I would love to have seen what they did. Let's move on to the synopsis. The movie opens in a modern English country house where a young girl named Rosaline experiences a series of dreams that make up the bulk of this film. Rosaline dreams she lives in a dark fairy tale forest during the late 18th century with her parents and sister Alice. While running through the woods, Alice is pursued and killed by wolves with glowing eyes. While her parents mourn, Rosaline stays with her grandmother. This superstitious old woman ominously warns Rosaline, never leave the path, never eat a windfall apple, and never trust a man whose eyebrows meet. Gran begins to knit a bright red shawl for Rosaline to wear while she tells her a story about wolves disguised as humans. This is Granny's tale to Rosaline. A young groom is about to bed his new bride when he steps outside to answer the call of nature. He does not return. His bride is terrified to hear wolves howl outside. A search the following day yields only a wolf's paw print. Years later, having remarried and started a family, she is shocked to find her first husband at her door. Enraged at her having children with a new husband, the groom tears off his skin and transforms into a werewolf. The new husband quickly beheads the werewolf when he returns home. Next morning, Rosaline returns to her village. Rosaline observes her parents discreetly having sex. She asks her mom if her dad hurts her in that process. She deals with the advances of an amorous teenage boy. Granny continues to knit the scarf while she tells Rosaline a second tale. Granny's second tale to Rosaline. A young man whose eyebrows also meet the bastard son of a priest walks through the enchanted forest wanting to become a man. He encounters the devil, anachronistically arriving in a Rolls Royce, chauffeured by the actress playing Rosaline in a blonde wig. The devil, wearing a modern suit, offers the boy a transformation potion, which he rubs onto his chest. Hair rapidly sprouts. The boy is initially happy, but vines grow swiftly from the ground, twining around his legs and trapping him. He wails in protest and fear, his face distorted by his cries. His anguished face appears in Rosaline's bedroom mirror. Granny has finished the scarf, which turned into a full red traveling cloak with a hood. Granny also gets snippy with the town priest while he's pruning trees. The family attends church. Rosaline and the boy walk home through the forest. They kiss. Rosaline runs away and climbs a tree overlooking the vast valley area surrounding the village where she lives. She puts on makeup. Bird eggs hatch into tiny human baby figurines. The boy discovers the cattle have been attacked by a wolf. Rosaline's father and the rest of the villagers set out to hunt the wolf. They set a trap for the wolf using a duck as bait. While they're away, Rosaline's mother bathes her, while Rosaline tells a tale about wolves. Rosaline's story to her mother. A woman who was done a terrible wrong by a young nobleman turns up visibly pregnant at his opulent wedding party to put wrong to right. She calls him and the rest of the nobles out for their inhumane actions and further denounces them by declaring the wolves in the forest are more decent. She reveals she is a witch and transforms them all into wolves. The servants watch, amused. The wolves flee into the forest as the witch laughs. Afterwards, she commands the wolves to serenade her and her child each night. Back in the dream, the wolf falls into the trap. The villagers shoot it dead. However, the wolf's corpse transforms into that of a human being. Later, Rosaline sets out through the woods to bring a basket of goods to her grandmother's cottage. Her suitor wants to escort her, but she heads off alone. On her way, she encounters an attractive huntsman whose eyebrows meet. She's afraid and also attracted to him. He challenges her, saying he can find his way through the forest to her grandmother's house before she can get there on the path. The hunter arrives at Rosaline's grandmother's house first, where he reveals his bestial nature and slaps her head clean off. Rosaline arrives later and uncovers the carnage. Her need to protect herself is complicated by her desire for the hunter. He makes her burn her Red Riding Hood while the company of wolves howls outside. They share a kiss, and following the exchange, Rosaline accidentally injures the huntsman with his own rifle. Upon the blow, the hunter contorts in pain and transforms into his wolf shape. Rosaline takes pity on the wounded beast, noting his pack could leave him behind. She sits down and begins petting the wolf kindly and tenderly while telling him a story. Rosaline's story to the huntsman/wolf. A she-wolf from the world beneath arrives at a village. Despite meaning no harm, she is shot by a villager. She reveals herself in her human form to an old priest who sees her innocence. He takes her in and bandages her wound. Although touched by the priest's kindness and merciful actions, she feels she is not fit to stay with the humans. Ultimately, she returns to her world through the village well. Eventually, the villagers arrive at Granny's house, looking for the werewolf within. Instead, they discover that Rosaline herself has become a wolf. Together, she and the huntsman escape to the forest, joined by a growling pack that has chosen each other as mates. The wolves seem to stream into the real world, breaking into Rosaline's house and gathering outside her bedroom. Rosaline awakes with a scream as one of the wolves leaps through her bedroom window and sends her toys crashing to the floor, symbolizing the end of her childhood innocence. Over the closing credits, Charles Perrault's Les Petits Chaperons Rouges is heard, with the moral warning girls to beware of charming strangers. Transformations. This film is an embarrassment of riches when it comes to werewolf looks and transformations. There are 4 distinct transformations shown and 5 different werewolf looks featured. The first transformation is easily the greatest in the film. The werewolf tears his literal skin completely off, exposing the bloody muscle and sinew of his neck, face, and arms. Then the muscled skeleton shifts into the wolf form before growing a new pelt. It is glorious. It does feel a little bit animatronic at moments and not quite as natural as some we've seen, but man, does it look good. I loved it. The final form is just that of a normal wolf, but getting to that wolf is amazing. The second transformation is probably the least impressive, but still looks okay. The rapid hair growth across his exposed chest was fun. The final look wasn't all that remarkable, but it wasn't supposed to be. It served its purpose. Now, the third transformation was awesome as well. It's also probably the most recognizable visuals from the film. I loved watching the nobles shift into wolves. Not quite as gory as the first transformation, more psychologically disturbing and aesthetically unsettling. A lot of the film shots were through crystal goblets, pitchers, broken mirrors, and windows, adding a distortion effect to the fluid nature of the transformations. Additionally, by having such a large party turn into a pack of wolves, we could cut from one noble's visage to another, showing the changes rippling through the decadent crowd without having too many practical effects. I love the paws bursting through the fine leather shoes. It was a great touch. There is no transformation in the fourth tale. The werewolf look is the least impressive as well, which makes sense to me. This is the shortest tale and is more about the kindness and mercy of humans than it is about the cruelty of the wolves. Interestingly, this is the only tale exclusively about a female werewolf. Finally, let's discuss the hunter. I loved his look. It seemed to fluctuate from shot to shot, depending entirely on how predatory he was being at the moment. When he killed Granny, he was at his most monstrous. When he was seducing Rosaline, he was at his most human. Only his eyes and his eyebrows gave away his true nature. Because the shift was so fluid, we never got a big showboat transformation scene like we did in the first and third tales, or like we do in other prominent werewolf movies. His costume was also fantastic, much more stylish than practical, exactly the kind of outfit designed to appeal to a teenage girl. Because this film is almost entirely stories and occurs in a dream, it plays fast and loose with werewolf lore. The film is far more interested in atmosphere and vibes than it is in the folklore. The 5 different werewolves all have slightly different lore. Plus, as we've established, the tales all serve to deliver a moral lesson. We do get the consistent unibrow, but we have no idea why most of these individuals are werewolves, the exceptions being the boy who makes a deal with the devil and the nobles who are cursed by the witch. All of the werewolves seem to be susceptible to normal weapons and injuries. Not a lot on that front. So let's talk about morality tales. They have always been a part of human storytelling. These types of stories deliver moral lessons through entertaining narratives and have passed down wisdom, cultural values, and guidance for proper behavior across generations. At their core, morality tales use metaphor and allegory to impart simple ethical precepts engagingly and memorably. Characters personify virtues or vices, with their fates illustrating the consequences of good or bad actions. Classic examples include Aesop's fables, such as The Tortoise and the Hare, which teaches the virtue of patience and diligence over arrogant haste. Religious and cultural traditions around the world are awash in morality tales, reinforcing ideals and beliefs. Buddhist Jataka tales recount previous lives of the Buddha to exemplify virtues like self-sacrifice and compassion. Parables from the Bible, such as the Good Samaritan, promote charity, mercy, and loving one's neighbor. Ancient Sanskrit texts of the Panchatantra provide wisdom through animal stories about friendship, loyalty, and wise conduct. Even in our modern secular society, morality tales continue to hold relevance. Children's stories frequently employ anthropomorphized animals or fantasy characters to convey ethical lessons about kindness, honesty, hard work, and other positive values in a format kids can understand. While morality tales can sometimes be seen as overly didactic or simplistic, their underlying purpose is to help shape moral reasoning in an accessible style that sticks in the memory. By couching ethical principles in vivid stories and characters, they make abstract virtues feel tangible and real-world consequences easier to grasp. Enduring moral tales reflect core human experiences and continue to influence cultural narratives across languages, eras, and societies. Having said all that, this film is packed to the rafters with symbols and symbolism teaching moral lessons. I could spend 90 minutes covering all the different symbols in sufficient depth. Instead, I'm just going to shotgun a bunch of symbols and say what I think they mean. At first, I was confused by the recurring symbol of the frog. It appeared frequently enough that I understood it must carry some significance. Upon reflection, I believe the frog serves as a symbolic reference to another transformation tale, the Frog Prince. Unlike the Big Bad Wolf story, where the wolf disguises its wicked nature, the Frog Prince requires the princess to see past the frog's outward appearance to the prince within. The frog's symbolism provides an intriguing thematic contrast by alluding to a beast-to-man transformation rooted in embracing inner beauty rather than confronting an outward monster. It's a clever symbolic juxtaposition woven into the narrative. During the scene where the huntsman seduces Rosaline, the film lingers on a shot of a white flower gradually turning red. While the short story depicts the seduction more explicitly, I interpret this visual metaphor of the changing flower as a symbolic representation of Rosaline losing her virginity and transitioning from sexual innocence to experience. The vibrant red hue emerging signifies the awakening of carnal desire within her during this formative encounter. By dedicating attention to this transformative natural imagery, the filmmakers employ a subtle yet evocative symbol to convey the deeper personal shift occurring within Rosaline amidst the supernatural narrative. Just before Rosaline recounts the story of the witch impregnated by the selfish nobleman, the film depicts 4 eggs hatching in a bird's nest, revealing tiny figurines of human babies. This metaphor arrives at a pivotal moment, representing Rosaline's own burgeoning fertility and the stirrings of womanhood within her. Though still a child herself, this symbolic birth signals the innate femininity and capacity for motherhood awakening as she blossoms towards maturity. The juxtaposition of the hatchling imagery with the fable of the unplanned pregnancy further cements the symbolic connection to the life-bearing reproductive potential Rosaline embodies, making a transition in her personal growth and identity as a young woman coming of age. Makeup also emerges as a recurring motif throughout the film. The movie opens with Rosaline facing consequences for experimenting with makeup, hinting at curiosity about adult femininity. This continues when Rosaline covertly applies makeup while perched in the tree, a private ritual signaling blossoming maturity. While not the sole motivation, makeup's traditional role in enhancing appearance and attracting romantic partners takes on layered meaning here. It outwardly symbolizes Rosaline's transition away from childhood and her unfolding awareness of herself as a feminine, desirable being. More than just cosmetic ornamentation, Rosaline's makeup carries undertones of sexual agency and openness to the ideals of beauty that often accompany adolescent yearnings. Rosaline's makeup usage represents both independence and her acknowledgement of new personal frontiers on the precipice of adulthood. Let's talk about the red hood. This resonates as a multi-layered symbol synthesizing contrasting ideas. On one level, the garment evokes innocence, vulnerability, and a sense of sheltered protection suited to childhood. Yet the vivid crimson hue simultaneously conjures associations with passion, desire, and the perceived perils of unbridled feminine sexuality. Infusing opposing qualities, the red hood operates as a nuanced emblem of Rosaline's transitional status, teetering on the threshold between girlhood and the inescapable dawning of womanhood. Still cloaked in the guardrails of childlike modesty, yet unmistakably beginning to explore the sensual awakenings of burgeoning adulthood. In donning this rich symbolic mantle, Rosaline's red hood transcends mere garment to become a ceremonial totem, equal parts talismanic guardianship and harbinger of the perils awaiting any woman's journey into the thickets of maturity. The film interweaves 2 traditionally distinct characters from the Little Red Riding Hood tale, the dreaded Big Bad Wolf and the heroic huntsman, into one multi-layered, paradoxical figure. The huntsman archetype conventionally represents a duality of danger and guardianship, a skilled killer, yet one whose violence serves purposes of sustenance and defense rather than cruelty. He personifies predatory undercurrents inherent to masculinity, a necessary, if unnerving, counterpoint to feminine vulnerability. Conversely, the folkloric Big Bad Wolf exists as the primordial boogeyman, the embodiment of malevolent appetites. Infusing these opposing avatars into one being, the film casts them as an enigmatic figure straddling the precarious line between savior and menace, shelter and jeopardy. By conflating ravenous hunger with righteous hunt, hostile carnal menace with paternalistic provider, the film distills the uneasy intersection of male power and female vulnerability into one emblematic, Janus face silhouette and embodying the capacity for both brutality and deliverance. This amalgamated figure challenges Rosaline to make the impossible choice: separate trusted protector from lurking predator at her own existential risk. We can't not talk about wolves. Wolves weave throughout the film as a symbolic embodiment of primal, unrestrained impulses, the unfettered wildness and lurking darkness coursing beneath the thin veneer of human civilization. The central werewolf metaphor emerges as a visceral manifestation of these untamed, animalistic drives given full horrific expression within the human form. It represents the innate capacity for lust, brutality, selfishness, and a surrendering of rational control to base instincts that lie dormant in every person. One poignant symbolic nugget referenced is the wolf's haunting, mournful howl, coveting the warmth and domestic comforts of the human hearth, yet eternally unwilling to relinquish its feral liberty to obtain them. This rich metaphor encapsulates the perpetual psychic tug-of-war between our civilized values and the primal yearnings pulsating just beneath. The eternal struggle of selfhood caught between light and darkness, order and chaos. It reminds us that no matter the trappings of cultural sophistication, we remain fundamentally wild creatures, eternally enthralled, yet repulsed by the intoxicating, brutal freedoms represented by these iconic beasts. Let's talk about the forest where they live. This looms large as a symbolic realm representing the unfamiliar and mysterious, and the uncharted territory of the psychonscious psyche. It exists as a primordial space where the norms, rules, and civilized order hold no sway. The forest mythically gives form to that uncharted internal wilderness every person must navigate, rife with intoxicating discoveries and existential pitfalls alike. It risks the utter dissolution of identity amidst its primeval abyss, an evergreen realm of rebirth and ruination, where the id reigns supreme, challenging all who enter to confront the most unrestrained aspects of their being, for better or worse. It beckons the bold explorer while ensuring none emerged unaltered. Opposite the forest is grandmother's house, which symbolizes safety, tradition, and domestic comforts. Rosaline has to take a carefully prescribed path from her village through the dangerous forest to reach grandmother's cottage. This symbolic journey represents leaving the protection of her parents and community to navigate the unpredictable, wild unknown before arriving at the assumed shelter of her grandmother's domestic space. Ultimately, this violation of this sacred home by the wolf reveals that no dwelling, no matter how cozy and traditional, can ever be a truly impenetrable refuge from external darkness, danger, and primal savagery. The idea of an inviolate domestic sanctuary is more fantasy than reality. The film explores the concept of hunger, both literal and metaphorical. The original bridegroom found himself ravaged by starvation upon his return home. The noble wedding party indulged in excessive and obscene food consumption, even as their transformations were underway. The big bad wolf's prominent, sharp teeth serve as a reminder of the predatory nature of the hunger, ever ready to consume. Hunger symbolizes the unrestrained appetites and carnal desires that hold the potential to devour not only the victim, but also the predator, should they remain unchecked. Furthermore, the film utilizes teeth and claws as symbolic representations of the inherent violence that can accompany sexuality when boundaries are transgressed or inhibitions cast aside. These are just my thoughts. I'm really interested in reading your thoughts in the comments below. What symbols did I skip or miss? What other observations do you have? I'd love to hear those. This film is, at its writer and director's explicit acknowledgement, a modern adaptation of the Little Red Riding Hood morality tale. The origins of the Little Red Riding Hood story are impossible to definitively pinpoint. It's a European folk tale that has existed in oral tradition across many cultures before being written down. However, the two most famous and influential written versions are Charles Perrault's Le Petit Chaperon Rouge, Little Red Riding Hood, published in 1697 in his collection of folk tales called Histories du Contes du Temps Passé. Sorry for the French. This is considered one of the earliest documented written versions that is closest to the widely known story today. The brothers Grimm, Rotkäppchen, Little Redcap, published in their anthology Grimm's Fairy Tales in 1812, is a retelling that differs somewhat from Perrault's version. While these French and German versions codified and popularized the tale, similar folk stories about a girl in a red hood/cap meeting a wolf existed in folklore across Europe for centuries beforehand. Versions have been traced back as early as the 10th century among French peasants, and similar tales appear in Italian and Scandinavian folklore. Variations have been observed even among Asian and indigenous American folk tales as well. The universality of the tale speaks to its capability and utility as a timeless childhood moral narrative. The darkly symbolic narrative can be interpreted as a cautionary tale about the perils of human naivete, feminine vulnerability, and lack of adherence to rules or advice from authority figures. On the surface, the story follows a young girl who unwittingly puts herself in harm's way by wandering off the safe path and divulging information to a dangerous stranger, the anthropomorphized big bad wolf. Her subsequent capture and consumption serve as the embodied consequences of her transgressions against her mother's instructions. This simple plot paints a blunt morality play, highlighting the crucial virtues of obedience to parental authority, avoiding straying from prescribed behavioral norms, and maintaining a healthy suspicion of unknown individuals who may not have one's best interests at mind. Through a feminist literary critique, one could interpret the story as an allegorical representation of the sexual vulnerability faced by women, with the wolf symbolizing predatory male violence or sexuality. Classic iterations depict an innocent young girl ill prepared to handle the cunning deception and calculation of evil male forces. Society's warnings fail to prevent her exploitation. From a modern social perspective, the tale can be viewed as a parable about the perils of human credulity and lack of situational awareness. Little Red represents the willful naivete of youth and how blindly putting trust in strangers or disregarding voices of wisdom can lead to disastrous outcomes. The wolf embodies the deception and greed that exists in the world, ready to ruthlessly take advantage. Only by developing prudence and the ability to recognize danger from a young age can one hope to avoid falling victim to patiently lurking threats. While simplistic on its face, Little Red Riding Hood contains layers of social commentary meant to prepare individuals for the strife and injustice that exist in reality. Its grim lessons about feminine vulnerability, the dangerous folly of naivete, and the consequences of disobedience have spanned centuries of oral and literary tradition, instilling pragmatic and caution through a classic symbolic narrative. Even in its modern, sanitized children's book form, this fairy tale endures as a stark reminder that lurking predatory forces may threaten those who stray from the safe and prescribed path. So, if you like lycanthropes, like, share, and subscribe. Contribute your thoughts and additional observations in the comments below. Let me know what I missed or what you noticed. Next, I plan on discussing Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf from 1985. Keep your eye on the moon, a silver bullet in the chamber, and we'll see you back next episode.